Hello and welcome to TOTM-Tales of the Motherland. We decided to have some fun and introduce a series of videos about true myths and legends of Africa. Although we still own the rights to every story, the ones in this series are based on real events. We hope you enjoy discovering them or rediscovering them as much as we did. If you do, please remember to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Thank you, and let's begin. The Lost Army of Cambyses. The time is around 524 before our Common Era. Although it is early morning, temperatures in the unforgiving Western Desert are already soaring. Winds blowing hot air in the 100 degrees Fahrenheit give the unpleasant hints of a scorching hot day ahead. Sand from unending rows of dunes was transported by the same wind to destinations unknown, and this constant dance of dust particles gave the scenery a somewhat blurry look. On the market plaza in Ammon, Oasis, the heat seems slightly more bearable. The greenery and nearby water certainly help a lot. Vendors had just begun unveiling their merchandise, which consisted mostly of figs, bread, dates, carpets, pottery, utensils, and some meats. This main market was shaded by several palm trees, and it provided the main source of community interaction in this oasis located southwest of the capital, Memphis. Ammon was a tropical paradise in those days, with lush wooded areas that boasted palm trees, date and olive trees, as well as an array of other vegetation. Animals such as donkeys, secretary birds, desert foxes, and all types of desert wildlife roamed the sandy roads and outskirts of this remote town. Jabari and his mother were among the first merchants to set store this morning. Customers were flocking already, eager to have their hands on essential food staples that characterized ancient Egyptian cuisine, such as bread, chickpeas, olives, and fowl meat. Business was booming lately. Today's crowd, just like the one the day before, was anxious to stock up on food in preparation for the looming invasion believed to happen just days from now. The air was heavy with tension caused by the impending conflict. King Cambyses II of Persia had sent an army of 50,000 soldiers that were marching towards Amun. He wanted to conquer all of Egypt, to expand his power, and make a name for himself in history books. Cambyses II had already seized most of Egypt, but there were still a few leaders that defied his authority, including Medunamon, the Oracle of Amun. An oracle was a highly regarded spiritual leader in those days, and he had great influence over the decisions of the kingdom. The Oracle of Amun in particular was very powerful. He was one of the greatest oracles in the world, and he was denying Cambyses' title of Pharaoh or King of Egypt. The rumor of Cambyses' army marching towards the oasis to demand respect and power had traveled through the desert at an astonishing speed. The sheer size of the army's caravan was awe-inspiring. Marching towards Amun was not just soldiers, but also their horses, weapons, carriages, personal belongings, food and water supplies, cooks, medical staff, and other personnel members that were necessary to make this mission a success. As Jabari helped pile up the dates that he helped his mother sell, he couldn't help but daydream about the countless tales of the mighty soldiers and their relentlessness, although he too worried about the looming conflict. His 7-year-old brain wondered if all those stories were true. He had heard of tales of Cambyses soldiers being over 8 feet tall, of how they could nail a person to the ground by simply pounding on them with their huge fists. He had heard of how their steps made the ground around them tremble for miles ahead, and how their chants echoed throughout Egypt for hours after they released the first sound. Certainly, his little oasis did not stand a chance against such a force. But Jabari's mother did not seem too worried. She had told him that everything would be okay, that the gods would take care of Cambyses' army, and that Amun would be spared from the havoc that army was known to cause on its path. Jabari was curious to see which one would prevail, the mighty gods of Egypt or Cambyses' strong army. Meanwhile, at the temple of Amun, the oracle was notified of the army's approach. Cambyses had been waiting for years for the moment he would be declared new pharaoh of Egypt by all who dwelt on the land. After he took hold of Memphis, he sent the pharaoh Psamtik III into exile and was determined to conquer all of Egypt, and even Ethiopia, which back then represented a much larger part of the African continent. His plan was to march along the Nile River, from Memphis to Luxor, and from then split his army in 2 parts. One part would be sent to the southeast to conquer Ethiopia, and the other one to the west to take care of that stubborn oracle and assert Cambyses' power once and for all. He was thirsty for power. He could not tolerate the oracle's insubordination. Cambyses wanted to give the oracle a chance to abdicate, though, so he sent a spokesperson to negotiate with him before his army descended on the oasis. After arriving at the temple, the spokesperson conversed with the oracle. "Great oracle, we have come to ask once again to have you yield to the power of the great king Cambyses II and to officially accept his title of Pharaoh of Egypt, ruler of all the land." The oracle stayed silent for a moment. Then he replied, "Even if I wanted to grant Cambyses his wish, which I don't, the gods will never allow such a treachery. You are the spiritual ruler that converses directly with the gods. Your words obviously mean something to them," the spokesperson said. "That is not how it works. Tell your king that as far as Amun goes, he will never be our king," the oracle replied. The spokesperson delivered the oracle's response to Cambyses, which made him furious. He decided to march onto Amun and crush it like a little sandcastle. He ordered for his army to move forward and teach that insolent oracle a lesson. And on they went, all 50,000 soldiers, with their daggers, their shields, the horses, the nurses, and all their supplies in tow started their march towards the oasis. Marching for days in this harshest part of the desert, lying between Egypt and Libya, and known for gigantic sandstorms. After 7 days in these harsh conditions, a major sandstorm moved in their direction. They tried to take shelter, but there was nowhere to do so. The sandstorm was huge and seemed to have come out of nowhere. One of the biggest sandstorms the land had ever known. It swallowed each and every one of Cambyses' soldiers. The entire army got buried under the sand. The soldiers, the officers, the weapons, the cooks, the food, the nurses and doctors, and even the horses. It was as if they never even set foot there. Yes, the mighty army that everybody feared so much had been swollen by sand. Ammon Oasis is today's Siwa Oasis. Many claim that in fact the army was defeated by local rebels and that Cambyses II was too proud to admit such an embarrassing defeat. Others say that they got lost in the desert and perished gradually of heat exhaustion and dehydration. Whatever the cause of the disappearance of that army, one thing is for sure: Jabari's mother's words held true. Siwa had been saved from Cambyses' bold ambitions, and he never became Pharaoh of all of Egypt. Well, at least not in Siwa. The end.